Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of PODCAD. We are joined with a friend of the show, a very special guest. He is an activist, an artist known for his living algae sculptures, and he's also a bit of a science guy. And I remember last time we filmed with you, my friend Alex here described you as an onion.
Yes.
A man with many layers, and you've added quite a few more layers. Welcome, Vlad Kanich, everyone.
Hi, it's great to be here again.
Yeah.
It's good to have you.
The second or third time I think we've had you on, and since the last time, there's been a lot of more developments than the last time that we had you on too.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been doing what's been really amazing to see how far and like big this project that we've been able to see from like the beginning, how big it has grown now with your living sculptures and stuff. And I was wondering if you could touch on a bit more sort of how it you feel it's been perceived so far.
But I feel like I wanted my life to be boring for a while, and it just does not come to that point. Right? It's always something, right? And then recently TEDx people found me on Instagram. They were like, "This is the best thing ever. Do you want to do a TEDx talk?" And I'm like, sure. And then 4 months of, like hardcore public speaking training behind the scenes and things like that. And and suddenly I'm giving a TED talk in front of like 1,000 people.
So they just reached out to you on Instagram?
Yeah, they were like,
Wow.
This is the best thing we've seen ever. Right?
That is a bit more informal than I thought it would be.
Yeah, they have like a selection process for most of the speakers, but they also invite two speakers that they think might contribute to the whole thing. So to answer your question, things have been really nuts, right?
Yeah.
What started as a second year integrated media project with a little piece of algae paper, it just exploded and it keeps on exploding, right? And now I'm just building better, bigger stuff, and it's kind of a continuous experimental laboratory because things they're never done. This sculpture I'm exhibiting today, it kind of, it breaks, it leaks, and then I fix it, and it's another piece of work. It's continuous thing. So
It's like a growing project, like it continues to literally grow.
And like when I started, I was thinking like, oh my God, this thing cracked. This is the worst thing ever. I need to repair it exactly as it was before. And then after a while, I'm like, but it gives character to the things. Things break, so you reshift them. So each sculpture is not the same at any future or other exhibition, which I started to think, wow, but this is great. Why do we need to tend towards perfection? Imperfections are so human and so great as well. So that's also something I'm like researching with this.
Reminds me of a question I wanted to ask you, but if you could look at your like first sculpture, and given that algae is a living thing, how has the sands of time affected your sculpture? Has it shrunk or in any ways you could notice?
Oh yeah, the big one that I made for Nuit Blanche last year, that's the one that I did not put any protective layers because I wanted to see what happens. And actually, I exhibited at a place where there was like a lot of humidity this summer.
Yeah.
So it moves, it shrinks, it warps, it changes. Oh God, I'll have to do something about that.
So shrinkflation is attacking the art world.
Oh, yeah.
Here for Vlad.
Yeah.
God, last time you left us, you were, I guess, gonna wrap up your OCAD journey, and you happen to leave with the Valid Victorian Award. So,
I mean, this year has been
that.
this year has been a decade for me, and looking back to February, I'm like, that was maybe another life,
Yeah, who knew that it would just lead to more public speaking?
It's like highlight after highlight.
Yeah, I'd like to say that we actually scouted you out first before TED.
Just put it in the air. We didn't have 4 months of preparation, but that's you don't need. Well, did you feel it was all well spent, and that was like, I mean, it must have been in front of so many people.
What, you mean TED?
TED, yes.
Yeah, I mean, that was great. Yeah. I mean, Okay, so I opened up the TED show. I was the first speaker, so that's an immense burden. So, like, I was stressed out of my mind. I didn't really sleep the night before because, you know, like, you're like, I'm doing this.
Yeah.
This is so great. So I'm walking on a stage, right? And there's like people, and you see all black stuff. You don't see that much of a people. And then I don't remember anything till the moment I walked off the stage because, you know, I just gave the talk, and it was really goddamn good, and people were like, this is the best thing ever, can you comment on this? And I'm like, none. Really?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a good thing because you get into the zone of speaking. Really, you're present in this very moment that you forget about the time or existence or memory, right? Plus, no teleprompters, no notes, anything. So that's a thing that you have to pull out of your head, and then, you know, and you're also struggling with yourself. In a way, am I going to forget this? Am I not going to forget this? Right?
Is that something that like the 4 months of preparation have helped you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, I started with this, you know, concept that was really good that I give at the exhibitions, right? But that you need to turn this into a talk. So I'm talking about two larger than life objects, which are capitalism and climate change or climate crisis, right? And when you want to convey information about that to the people, usually people block out after the first sentence because these are like, let's dismantle capitalism. I don't want to talk to you anymore. Come on, dude, get serious. So I needed to boil down these concepts through the art in a way that people would understand. And that's where 4 months of training kicked in. So we really worked on reworking this talk, and it turned out to be really great. So for me personally, a journey where I can now talk about these super hyper objects in a really approachable way. So everybody can join the discussion, right? So if we want to dismantle capitalism or approach climate change, we start with simple things. So you see this sculpture, you breathe out CO2, sculpture eats it up, breathes out oxygen, and you're in an interactive relationship. But that sculpture is there, that sculpture is real, and you're doing some shit with it at the moment of the exhibition. And if you cut that into a relationship at the exhibition, people can immediately see what are the effects, right? You kill that algae in the sculpture, I don't get my oxygen, and I die or I live less healthier. So that is how you approach climate change and toxic climate change, by giving people concrete, real examples in front of them. Not saying like, oh, there's like this garbage patch somewhere in the Pacific. It is terrible. Okay, I'm just mocking this stuff, but people cannot perceive where is that, why is that, how large is that, or, you know, temperatures. And then scientists, they give us this like statistical data that is so dissociated from any emotions or empathy or what we can perceive nowadays. And we see so many stuff like the wars and stuff going on. So you're just like, okay, 1.5, what does that mean? You know, just give me something real. So talk was also about going back to humanity, right? Something that we all have forgotten a little bit. And it's a lot about the breathing, just how you can use the simple gesture of breathing to actually change the world. It sounds trivial, but it's not. Healthy breathing, healthy communities, strong communities, right? Then conversations around that. So just by breathing healthy, you can actually change the world.
I'd say like we had this conversation last time, but on that note, you know, to get people's attention, a lot of people have been destroying paintings for it, and I think we touched on it a little bit that time, and I'm glad to see something that isn't destructive, you know, to bring awareness, and it's it far more open way to discuss these things.
Well, I'd like to interject.
Really?
Yeah. They haven't destroyed any paintings.
That's true.
It was just more of like the idea of destroying a painting, but they target paintings that are behind glass.
Protected, right? It's like that subjectivity.
Whew.
Yeah.
Here's
Vlad's gonna give his whole...
Well, here's the thing, like the situation is kind of dire, right? We've seen this like last year for the first time here in Canada, right? The forest fires at our doorsteps in the cities. So things are really getting bad. So every means of doing things is really, you know, we need to work together with all the actions that we can. I personally don't think that's a good way, because my way is a peaceful, non-violent, community-building, conversational kind of way. And I just think art is so important because it has been left out of conversations, right? For the environmentalism, and it's crucial for it because it sparks imagination, curiosity, and the feeling of awe, which is all the things that bring people together and they make them think more openly, right?
Yeah.
So when you have this group of people who's destroying access of people to the artwork, they're making a lot of people pissed off. Can you figure solutions when you're pissed off?
Of course
When
not.
you're angry? Okay, I understand why they're doing that because that's
Yes.
the point of access and visibility. But hey, dude, why don't you go do shit with the building of the big oil company? You know, because you can't, because that's too risky, because you're going to end up in jail. Like, I mean, I don't particularly care about old masters. Like, they are just collectibles which are overpriced to hell, and they signify this 1% layer, you know, this richness and luxury and stuff like that. But, you know, some people really get something from that more than they get from actually, you know, we're going to glue ourselves, whatever.
And I guess like it's the question of like it pivots the conversation away from how to deal with climate change or negotiate and figure out, you know, a solution to this, and instead puts the attention or the focus of the news cycle on these people tried to destroy a painting and not the cause of why they're doing it, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with
like
that.
I don't see like after, you know, like for example, like, you know, they threw soup at it or cake at it and stuff. You don't see the headline saying activists defending global warming to try to destroy a painting. It just says activists destroy painting, right? I feel like with your work, it's a little bit more situated in that like the message doesn't get lost or distorted from an opposite action that can be interpreted or positioned as a sort of anti thing, right? Where like you're adding to the conversation by actively opening that door to conversation, whereas in trying to destroy something else to make that comment, it just opens the door for the criticism to be like, oh well, look at like the negative of this side too, right?
Yeah, I think that's very true, and I think the best thing is when people figure out solutions by themselves. So I don't talk too much with people when they approach my artwork, but they start to talk by themselves. And then when they approach you about questions for environmental issues, then the real conversation starts. Like, if I can talk to you and I say, hey man, you need to recycle.
I'll try.
And you're just like, dude, go F yourself, right?
Yeah.
But if you come to me and I say, dude, if I recycle, what's going to happen to this? Like, there's this spark of curiosity, and you're going to start to think by yourself, for yourself, and that's where the change happens. These environmental movements around the world, they're so old-fashioned. They're relics of like 80s and 90s shit. We need to reinvent this whole thing and bring the humanity back, because what they're doing, they're just wanting to break into the news cycle, which is really hard, but that's a spectacle of sort. Right?
Yeah.
They just want to be in the news, bring attention to whatever they have, but no real change or fundamental community building has taken place. They just kind of dissociated community from themselves and from the art. And end result, museums are going to be like airports, like after 9/11, right? You're going to need to take off your shoes, you know, all the liquids, metal detectors. So there's also
no
like
cake,
their
no soup.
their fucking access for normal people.
I mean, I can say like when I was in the summer, I went to Nice and I went to the museum there, their Museum of Contemporary Art and stuff. And it is like crazy strict security. You got to go through like a metal detector, and then they search your whole bag. And then even after they've searched it, they take it from you and they lock it up and give you a chit to get it back at the end. Like, you can't bring anything in, and it is because they are so scared that somebody is literally going to just go and break stuff. And I think it's I don't know, we haven't really started seeing it in Toronto yet, but I think it is like, you know, there is this tipping point that once one activist does it, it's just gonna...
I'd say start with the cause exhibit. You're gonna throw soup at something. I'll spearhead the movement.
There's this whole like movement of artists who used to like raise awareness for environmentalism by throwing trash on the floor of the galleries and stuff. I think that's ideal for those people who want to destroy and trash artworks, right? Go destroy trash in a gallery, right?
Yeah. So, what is your sort of with your pieces and stuff, I know like right now they are getting exhibited and stuff, but what if like an institution were to approach and say like, we want to keep one of your living sculptures permanently in our collection and not have the ability for it to change and stuff like you were talking about before, with it naturally decaying or evolving and changing? What is your sort of thinking on that, like the institutional control of art as a commodity?
Wow, that's a good one. Well, first of all, everything dies, and if I ever get really wealthy from making this stuff, I'm gonna just let my sculptures die as a time-based media, ephemeral cycle, and you watch it die. So it's kind of it's kind of really
It doesn't
on its
become this
way?
beacon. It doesn't become this
yeah, it's
beacon
on
of
display
hope
as a
anymore.
public art, let's say you watch it die and there's a skeleton inside,
Yeah.
and it's so very, tactile and humane, and you see things die and you think like, oh my God, I'm also gonna die. But we have this old barriers towards that are really not natural and push us back into capitalism.
Would the message be, oh my God, the planet's gonna die?
No, well,
No.
everything does. Life and death are all connected in that
course,
way, and
yeah.
I just never thought that your sculptures are actually going to die.
Yeah,
and
they
decay away.
I preserve them. I put some stuff so they do not degrade. But if I were not to preserve them, they would just decay away and just go back to the land. So this brings us to your question with the institutions. I really particularly don't mind or care. I could build one for any museum or any corporation or anything, because the message there is more important what it gives to people who are part of that corporation stuff. So we have this whole thing about capitalism. Oh, we're going to dismantle capitalism. Oh, we're going to F up capitalism. Capitalism this, capitalism that. But you can't really fight capitalism if you're poor, right?
Fair enough.
You gotta get your own before
let's say
you
this-
go and get theirs. But just to, I know you have many points. I want to bring it to something I read on the CBC article that you recently did, which you should all check out. At the end, you mentioned building a 30-foot, even taller sculpture for everyone to enjoy here in Toronto. And there were some sort of, like it would produce oxygen for 1,000 trees, but I'm sure, you're working out all the kinks, and maybe you could touch on that project that.
Well,
hopefully-
yeah, it's actually, I'm doing MFA in sculpture at York now, and my master's thesis is probably going to be 20, 30 foot tall. So
Okay.
the things
So
that
it's in
I've
the works.
imagined are now, they're in a process of making. But to figure this out and to build this out, it takes time and materials and stuff. But yeah, hopefully it's going to be exhibited at York in a public space where people are going to be able to, interact. And it's also an experimental laboratory as well, because I really don't know exactly what is going to happen. I had positive feedback with all these sculptures, but what happens if you put this in a really large public space?
Especially when
Let's see.
people can interact with it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
of course it's going to spark some conversations and interactions, but what's going to happen to the algae? And let's bring algae to conversation as well. As non-living organisms, suddenly we are in conversation, but the conversation is based on breath. So how do you communicate just by exhaling some sort of molecules and then, receiving some sort of molecules? It's a weird kind of communication, but it can be figured out. Because algae, they produce, 70% of planetary oxygen daily. They're major carbon sinks, right? So they are, without algae, we would die in 2 days probably on this planet. And nobody's really talking about it because they're far away. You only learn about toxic algae blooms. They're not good for your fish tanks.
Yeah.
Poor fish tank people. I mean,
Yeah, my
the algae
dad
needs to
especially,
be...
yeah.
So yeah, that thing is, it's in progress. I would love to see that as a piece of public art in a more prominent space in Toronto too.
It would be really good for York because the campus is very depressing. So it needs some life.
I cannot confirm or deny.
Okay, yeah, that's my statement. But see, you talk a lot about upping the scale, making things larger. But have you ever considered like making smaller sculptures? Like would that be something possible and possibly more accessible to have like smaller sculptures that, let's say, someone could keep at their desk or something.
Yeah, I'm also making like wall pieces too that people. I actually had like 2 sales this year. Like,
Wow.
"Whoa, yeah,
Yeah.
Good job.
It's like amazing, right? But it takes a while for people to get used to the notion of having something like that in their home. So I get like from this last client who bought one a month ago, he said like, this is like, we keep it at the entrance to our place and it's a great conversation starter for everybody who comes to our home. And I'm thinking that's exactly what I intended. So yes, I will keep producing smaller pieces and these pieces, but my focus is on public art.
Of course, yeah.
And accessibility is like a key term in my practice. And I started like 3 years ago with this Deleuze guitar-y philosophical concept of bodies without water, this and that. And you need to read like 7,000 books to understand that stuff. And then it hit me, who's going to have access to that art? Like we that study at the university level, but who else, right? And then I just started to boil things down. And now like a kid, 4-year-old kid can understand this and enjoy. So that's kind of really important, right? Especially when we are all artists here. When you think about when you create art, do you want it to be accessible to everybody or just to a certain portion of? So I think we live in times where we need public art. It needs to be good and functional and utilitarian.
Yeah.
And people need to have access to that.
Yeah, especially when it carries like a heavy message, like talking about the climate. That's something that should be accessible for everyone.
I think it's like even like I know in some cities they're starting to explore how they can use algae in sort of like tanks and stuff as air filters and things, but they're like sort of just these rectangular like tanks of algae and stuff.
Yeah.
And I know like the sentiment is good and stuff, but I think by making it something that people actually want to like engage with and activate, it allows, like as you were saying, that conversation to continue, because it's not just this sort of greenwashed piece of space in a city, right?
Well, I know exactly what you're thinking about. It's a good thing that I published my research online in 2020, and suddenly those algae tanks came out in 2023. Like, okay, I'm not gonna draw any conclusions, but internet is a big place, and I was working on a piece that was looking as the tank filled with algae, and I said, if you put it in a city space, it can clean the air. And then suddenly 3 years later, somebody's like, oh, I put this in a city, it cleans the air. But these people are charlatans, okay? These people are frauds because he put this in a space. First, it looks terrible. Second, he called it liquid trees.
Yeah, I know. Yeah.
Okay, but most importantly, this is a capitalist product because they didn't think, what happens to the algae afterwards? Okay, it eats pollution, it eats CO2, and then it grows. But you didn't explain what he does with the algae. I permanently capture algae in a sinks that are art pieces. It's there forever. It's not going anywhere. But this dude, he needs to do something with that algae. So he has excess algae. What is he going to do? If he puts the algae in a landfill, that is carbon that goes back to the atmosphere, and he didn't do shit. And even worse, if he puts it in circumstances where there's no air, so anaerobic decomposition, then it also produces methane, and then he done even worse to the freaking environment, right? But he's like, oh, this is such a viral, I'm a genius, I invented this. I mean, I welcome all the solutions that involve algae, they're great, but I spent 4 years researching this stuff, right? And you can't give me a solution that creates another problem.
Yeah.
And this is just creating another problem, which is we're just gonna, put it somewhere.
It's similar to like the same thinking of like, oh, we've got this like 60, 70-year-old tree. We're gonna cut it down to build something, but don't worry, we're gonna plant 3 seedlings in its thing. That's by cutting that tree down, it still has neutraled out because that tree has collected 70 years of carbon that has now just been re-released, right?
And it's not just that. People are like, we're gonna plant trees. Wasn't that like in the United States, we're gonna plant 1 billion trees?
Yeah.
Dude,
Mr. Beast.
Well, it could be back in 40 years.
It
since it
takes
happens.
40 years for a tree to be fully functional carbon sink, right? And if you don't plant them with the biodiversity in mind, then you have a single monoculture that is not resistant to anything. It's not resistant to diseases. Forest fires, just like
It's
burn
gone,
through it.
yeah.
So it's not just like we're going to plant 1 billion poplar trees here. Dude, problem solved. No,
Yeah.
most likely in 2 years, there's not going to be any poplar trees.
I met
there.
a tree planter, and it seems like they were most concerned about was like, okay, each tree 30 cents, on to the next. Like,
Yeah.
this
It's definitely like, I mean, you even look at it like, for example, Metrolinx, they're using trees as this sort of thing where like they're like, oh, every whatever of track that we put, we're going to plant this many trees and stuff to like make our project carbon neutral and stuff. But then it's this question of like what you said, like it's not neutral until 40 years down the road. It takes 40 years for that to come into fruition. Metrolinx has been promising that they're going to plant trees for every, I think it's like kilometer of tracker they put, or every tree they cut down, they're going to plant more and stuff. But like you said, it takes 40 years for it to become a carbon trap. And it's just almost like it's a blanket solution to sort of make sure that the public is content with.
Well, a lot of these solutions are just about creating good image for a company. But what we need are solutions for places of critical diversified knowledge, right? It's easy to plant a tree, but it's not easy to think about the whole system of where the tree is going to plant it, right? But trees are essential for urban environments, and we need them. So let's not create more problems. But it's kind of hard nowadays with this carbon credit schemes, where you can now actually pay additionally for your airplane ticket, so somebody would plant something somewhere, and it's just so dissociated from everything. I think, we as people originated from the tribal system, and we still have a little bit that in ourselves, like small communities doing stuff. That's what we need. We don't need companies telling us that they're doing more stuff. Like with this recycling scheme that originated from Coca-Cola, which company didn't really want to wash their bottles, so they wanted people to bring them back, and then it spiraled into all this. Don't even get me started on this personal responsibility for environment. Like, you need to recycle, you separate stuff.
It's your fault.
Your fault.
Yeah.
You need to drive electric cars, otherwise. Come on, dude, seriously.
I was even just reading like yesterday night or this morning, I can't remember exactly, but there was an article that like the Canadian court has officially like reversed the bans on single-use plastics in Canada. So they don't know, they're not leaving, like they're not making it law to not use plastic for straws and plastic bags and all that stuff anymore. They're leaving it up to corporations to make a decision if they want to go back to using plastic or stay with like plastic alternatives. And I just think it's this frustrating game of like, like companies blame the consumers, and then consumers say, no, you need to hold the corporations responsible. But then every time that they have the ability to be held responsible, they don't, because it's cheaper to do something else, right?
I don't really know why people are so surprised. Corporations just care about profits. The environment is just an image that gives them more profit, so we shouldn't look at them as problem solvers, right? If anything, they're just going to use the whole environmental movement and just turn it into a big commercial or spectacle, like what happened with that Kylie Jenner Pepsi thing when they turned like protest was turned into this mock-up, and the cop is like, that's the best thing ever.
Nice.
And after that, like, it's like, can you protest like really seriously?
Yeah, for sure. I think another thing that's interesting to look at is like, I don't know if you've been like what you think about and stuff, but the difference between North America and Europe with its policies and stuff towards the environment. I know last week the European Union officially banned terms like for corporations and companies using terms like green or environment eco-friendly and those sort of like blanket terms like greenwashing products. And my, I guess, question to you is like, what in North America can we learn from other places like Europe and other places around the world that we could implement to better benefit our sort of system towards being eco-friendly and environmentally sustainable?
Well, Europe is better. Has better laws towards everything. Like they just banned Facebook ads, right? And stuff like that. It's really great. what can you really do, right? It's a system that's so deeply embedded into everything. So there's no point of change from what we can do, like protest-wise or stuff-wise. We can go back to this thing and provide resistance from within with community building. Because what does the whole system thrive on? Upon dividing people into groups, into races, into genders, into this, into that, right? So if we work from within and resist with our bodies in a way that we unite and we start to bridge the gaps and differences and spaces in between this, I think that's the biggest upheaval that we can do, right?
Sure.
They're going to use greenwashing, for sure.
But I think it's the question of like, even if you ban stuff like that, there's always a loophole or a workaround. There's always a new term that gets co-opted or created into this sort of like, like within our society, there's always the need to sell or to, consume, right? Like we live in like a society that's based around consumerism, right? So I guess like the larger question is we've been talking about like, is the responsibility, obviously the corporations aren't going to change, so is it the responsibility of people to further question how they're consuming?
Well, yeah, in some sort of way, it's a group effort. I always question what I do and how I can be more sustainable. That's just good practice for the future, right? Like I said at the start, we are all in this. Like we need to use all of the weapons that we have. But there's also these things are great conversation starters. Like you start conversations, and then you can actually change governmental policies, right? And that it can influence corporation as well. I mean, they're off the hook. Like this is wild capitalism that's happening. Like Vancouver, Apple, $2. Mm-hmm. You got to be kidding me, right?
What did you think of the Vancouver air while you were there?
Well, it's
Stepping
great.
out of
I come from the tradition of maritime tradition, so anything that's close to any body of water that has salt, I'm like, yeah.
And so much moss everywhere, and you just don't get the same feeling here. But we're in completely different places. I see there's a book on our table, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about the book you published. What was it? It's
Well, yeah, sure. This is Garden of Waves.
Garden of Waves.
Yeah,
Yes.
this is my ever-changing book because so many things are happening to me that I just need to, I need to have an AI to update this book on a weekly
So
basis.
like on edition 7 now?
yeah. So this is kind of edition 5.
Oh, wow.
Right. Okay. So so this is kind of basically a catalog plus compilation of ideas and essays people have written about my stuff. So it's kind of a starting point. This one is really great. So this is like on day 1 at the exhibition at Interaccess, right? And then like in 20 days or like a month, you can see how algae grows, right? And it's kind of a time-based media because the sculptural piece changes as well as nature changes. It's kind of weird, but it makes you think. Plus, what you can't get from this point is that all the sculptures have sound. They have this bubbling sound. So there's a voice to each sculpture, right? And it kind of provides this soothing white noise.
I remember like the first time I saw your work was at 401 Richmond.
Check it out.
And it was before I even knew that you were at OCAD. And I just remember being in there and there was like a bunch of them on the wall and just that like low hum and bubbling. It was just really like soothing. Like you can't experience it unless you're in front of it because it is such a not only like visual but like auditory and just like sensory experience. Like even like you said, like by standing by it and stuff, the room just feels fresher. Like it is this sort of like thing that does really make you feel like you're interacting with the artwork, even like unintentionally because of what it is providing to a space.
By the way, how's your basement? Is it still very oxygenated?
It's very. I moved my algae farm to York now, and I'm working on really building a proper one. I mean, I started with all sorts of improvisations, right?
Yeah.
God knows how this has been working out for me. Jesus Christ.
Would you ever consider making like a do-it-yourself kit? You know?
Yeah,
Create
maybe.
an algae home in your home.
Yeah. I have a loaded question. Do you think that we are living in the Anthropocene right now?
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Please go on and describe what an Anthropocene is for all.
Well,
the-
Earth
the
has
people who
multiple
listen.
epochs, and
then circle back
the
to
the,
epochs.
the well when a you're the science guy, so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but whenever there's like a major change in like the Earth, like the last epoch was the Holocene,
Oh, I
which was
see.
the last ice
Mhm,
age,
right.
and people are saying now that we're entering a new epoch where human activity has changed the
World, yeah.
to change
The way that it works.
Yeah, the composition of the world.
Yeah.
I read something interesting about. Have you ever heard of the term plastiglomerates?
No.
Yeah. So I think they were first discovered on an island in Brazil. That scientists found rocks, sedimentary rocks that were bound by plastic. So this new type of sedimentary rock that includes the
man-made
things around
material,
it,
yeah.
but
Yeah.
it's bound by plastic, caused by I think the major cause is from fires, or like fires on beaches, and like plastic melts and then just picks up sediment, and
Yeah.
like these things are kind of popping up. It's terrifying, frankly.
Plastic is in our rocks.
Plastic
as
is
well
in
as our
everything.
guts.
Like I was reading a thing where they're like, there's this belief within the scientific community now that there's not a single drop of water on Earth that hasn't touched plastic at one point, just because of how prevalent it is, not only in the ocean but in the ways that we consume it. Like, the reality of it is, like, if you drink water from a plastic water bottle, it has plastic in it. If it rains from the sky, it's capturing microplastics on its way down. Like, we have changed not only like the water, but we've changed the earth. We've changed our sort of like, the gas and stuff in the atmosphere above us. We've contributed so much to it. It is a weird thing, I guess, that we need to sort of accept as a society and find solutions to, as Vlad's been talking about, because I think if we don't, we're headed towards a brutal fiery crash and
But there are a couple of points there.
Should just go back to lead, you know?
Yeah,
there's like
okay, Anthropocene for sure. We are entering the age of human. I mean, it's proven that since the 50s, when they did the scientific measurements and stuff, that our influence has been changing the atmosphere in a way that we actually do this damage to the planet. So that's, for the first time in the history of the planet, the temperatures have risen so rapidly and so high that they cannot be tied to anything else but human influence. And carbon dioxide due to burning of fossil fuels, that's the main culprit. So our industry, and we used to live good off of that. We're not anymore. But so I was in Montreal 2 weeks ago to visit a friend, and he was doing this show that has environmental spin. And I talked to the director of the show afterwards. She did this like kind of little press session, and she was talking like, I don't know what to do with this. Like, I don't know if anybody's doing anything about the environment. And I approached and I said, like, there are people working on this and you're not alone. And she just bursted into tears. And that made me think, like, shit, there are people working on solutions right now, but we don't know about it. So that's like another point of resistance, is bringing these people together and just letting people know they're not alone in this stuff, and that everybody can contribute, and that hope is the best motherfucking weapon against climate crisis and and climate injustice and social injustice as well. So that's like, there was a really good takeaway from that, right?
Yeah.
And that's like Montreal, Toronto, and there's dissociation of. That's what I was telling you, like divisions in between people that have been artificially made, so we quarrel in between ourselves. Why this whole thing is happening? And we're talking about a system that is so powerful, so embedded. So there's no frontal entrance here anymore, guys. That's done, right? We need to start from the bottom, and we need to organize a grassroots movement that is going to be really powerful. And I started with this, but now I'm thinking like a possibility of a real change on a global scale. So these are just points of entrance. Let's see what we're going to figure out next year, because it's about critical knowledge that is diversified, and now we're like talking to that person there, talking to that person there, and they're doing this, and this needs to be that needs to be public knowledge. People need to know about that. And I think like more than your responsibility to recycle is your responsibility to share the news.
I mean, even just educate yourself, right? Like
Yourself, and you know what? Like, just imagine if we were posting one post per week or per month, like, hey, this is this motherfucking great news that the guy from Indonesia has just figured out, right? But we are in this loop of like bad news, and until your serotonin and dopamine get depleted, so you get them filled just by watching bad news. So we are now talking about pharmacological and psychological consequences of this system of capitalism through our phones, right? Which you get addicted to participating in a system. But how you overcome that with positivity? It sounds so trivial, but it's not.
Love is the answer.
Love is the answer. We're going back to the 60s. Breathing,
Peace and
laughter,
love.
love, compassion, empathy, freaking humanity. If anything is going to save us, it's us going back to these values that we are also shedding these values as much as we're losing Earth. And you know what? Maybe the temperature is going to rise above any Paris or this or that accord, and then companies and corporations are just going to say, you know what, fuck it. This thing is doomed. We are just going to burn everything to hell. So what are we going to do then, right? There's still some, I think there's a decade. This is going to be a crucial decade where we as people have the power to actually prompt any real change. And I feel like in a decade, that time might be gone, right? So we are at the front of resistance.
it's like the tipping point, right? We're right there. It
Yeah.
could go either way. I think it's interesting that you touched on using the social media to like sort of spread information or join community and stuff, when obviously like the largest like media corporations and social media platforms and stuff, that is likely highly against their wants or wishes for people to do that, because they themselves as the corporation are contributing at a large scale to this problem, especially with data servers and just the overconsumption of stuff. It is almost a double-edged sword, where it's like, obviously they want people to use their platform and spread this stuff because it's content and it brings in ad revenue, but it also, they restrict it because it is like stabbing them in the back, right?
So what you're saying is we should be sticking out your gyat for the environment.
Well, I think it's I think it's this question of like, as consumers of these platforms, we need to start holding them accountable too, right?
Well, the thing is that I read some calculations, which is pretty wild, that you produce around 60 kilograms of carbon per year just by using your social media. So there is a problem of servers that are really, computer servers, they produce heat, they burn a lot of fossil fuels. They tell us, we are going to be green by this year, that year, but that's just not happening. There's not enough infrastructure to have all these things powered by electricity at this point. So we're looking at maybe in 10 years they're going to reach some level. So using your phones is actually bad for the environment. Are we going to stop using our phones? Of course, we are not going to stop using our phones. And that's not the point. I told you that we should kind of embrace the system to subvert the system, so we can actually use those ads and these things in our phones to actually prompt some change. But we're just using it for leisure and fun now, right? And these are the things that are going to change. And you know what's going to prompt real change? And I think next year is just going to be a huge catalyst for everybody, right? If this year was bad and if the next year is going to be worse, then we are going to be like, who, dude, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
So
I
straw
can't
breaks.
breathe that air. I'm condoned to spend my life, indoors, and there's this orange mist. God damn it, right? everything. They need to figure out the orange AI removal stuff, right? How to make us all you look younger, and we are outdoors, but we are actually indoors.
I feel like it all
This is a great time for us to start organizing platforms of resistance from our own personal perspectives, right? We have a year till next year to see how summer is going to go. I presume it's going to be equally bad as this one or even worse. Might be better if some volcano erupts and it kind of cools the atmosphere, but that's just
that's wishful thinking.
That's like that's not a solution to the stuff, right? And I think like I was like when I was 2 years ago when I was researching that, I was like, frontal resistance, protest, we need to do now. Use the system to subvert the system. How are we going to do that? I don't exactly know, but I'm going to tell you, 4 years ago, I didn't know shit about building living sculptures. I was a filmmaker, and now I suddenly do this. So you can figure stuff out from your basement or your living room, even when you're trapped during the pandemic. People are doing that like on a daily basis, right? And we've been just told nothing is possible, right? The messages of hope are the most powerful messages we can spread. Like that person in Montreal who was really touched because there's somebody else doing this stuff. Imagine how many other people can be touched by hope or humanity or just communication. We forgot how to talk, how to build relationships. Everything has been forgotten. So by engaging into environmental thinking, we are going back to the basics of humanity, and it's so cool, right? Touching a person builds oxytocin reactions in your brain, right? And they want to cut that and feed you with some sort of pills to replace that. Is that like really fucked up and sad?
Yeah, it's scary.
Yeah, well, that's the beauty of art, right? Because like you said, it's something that gets people talking. It's a way of protest that positively enforces reinforces conversation, and as you said, can lead to changing policy, right?
Yeah, exactly. Now, environmentalism has failed us, science has failed us, right? And now art comes as this underdog, and it's just going to do so much positive damage.
Yeah. I'm gonna show this podcast to my dad.
Yeah.
See,
I definitely want to show this. Spread this around.
Art is good.
I think nobody expects of anybody to be this like hero changing planet guy, right? But that's not the point. If you just engage into conversations with your dad, right, with your neighbor, and you just do a little bit of change where you are at, and you make yourself comfortable with what's coming, and a little bit of education and perspectives. That's all that we need, right? Because that change is going to multiply. Like your ads, like we're probably going to get ads after that on our phones. They're going to be like, I don't know what they're going to be like.
Algae sculptures from AliExpress.
No, it's going to be my ad.
My
sculpture.
The book, yeah.
So I think all rules are off the table, right?
Yeah.
And just fresh start of everything, and it is possible, right? Because you all lost hope. Everybody lost hope. I lost hope like last year, but not anymore.
It's back.
I'm back.
Vlad is back.
I mean, going back to TEDx, it kind of really gives you a perspective that there are people who are interested in, change and new things, and it's a really good, come on, like 5 years ago, I was in Croatia. I was living this mundane, sad life of no accessibility to any opportunities, And I'm suddenly 5 years after, I'm talking at TEDx for, I wouldn't say it's a dream come true, but it's, it's exceeded my expectations of what I'm going to get from coming to Canada, right?
Yeah,
So,
for sure.
still, you said opportunities are closing up, but this is the place where if you want to push it, things can really break in a positive way.
And I think it takes the first few people like yourself kicking that door open with full force, which allows the other people to follow in and continue that conversation and creation and expression of ideas.
Yeah, I can say the best thing is when a kid comes to an exhibition and like 5-6 year old kids, and they're like overwhelmed by this and they want to know more about the algae, right? They want to explore this world. So you can see that little glowing dust. And I'm just thinking, like, if this inspires a kid who is going to figure out stuff in 2 to 5 years, like, my mission is complete, right?
Yeah.
For sure.
We have some images we'd like to share from TEDx.
All right.
You know, their setups are not as nice as here as podcast. You know, it's
Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you've seen it first at PODCAD before TEDx. These guys are like, they're going to be
That's how
huge.
Ted actually discovered you. They watched our
That's our
podcast.
podcast.
Hey, I
This
bet you
guy's good.
TEDx started as 3 guys doing stuff like
Did-
that.
I don't. Is that new or that sculpture? Or?
Yeah, that one's recently new. I made it for Artist Project Toronto in April, and yeah.
There's the gentleman himself. We need to get one of those signs, dude.
What a TEDx
you-
SFU
No,
sign.
one that's podcast.
I bet
big
your
and sit
your
on it.
LinkedIn looks amazing right now.
LinkedIn is awesome.
And I'm sure you made a lot of friends at TEDx.
Oh wow.
Want to mention any of the the people you sort of stood by to do the talk as well?
Woo! No, I think this was the largest project people from SFU organized, and they did such a great job. The venue was fantastic. It's just like huge space. It was 1,000 people there. They managed to sell tickets. Other 7 speakers were like on topics from like overcoming ADHD to AI overlords to really some fighting the battles with humor and comedy and stuff. So everything was really well done from Paul Folkowski and Yilung Tang. So they did a really great job of organizing all stuff. But there's a team of more than 100 people that was involved into doing this.
crazy.
It's really crazy.
It's a lot of work.
And sometimes things just conspire to work out, and this worked out in their favor, like I would say brilliantly. None of them was organizing an event of this size, and this is a pair of like TEDx Portland or TEDx Sydney, the really huge events, and they pulled this off with maybe fraction of the budget that these big events get, right? So we are again talking about underdogs who like engage into something and they figure it out. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, for sure.
So is this available on their website or?
So like
YouTube?
there's a tedious process of verifying TEDx videos. So it goes to official TEDx organization, and then they have to stamp it, and usually 2 months. So it's going to be available somewhere.
Yeah. What are they
January.
verifying? The information?
I don't know. I guess they have like 3 guys like you in the basement
Yeah.
somewhere.
Yeah.
And they're like
cut
just,
that part.
they're just going through.
Yeah.
That's
Ted himself.
Yeah.
was that an appropriate hand movement in that
Oh, okay,
frame?
yeah.
Like was that? No, mostly because like they really do not approve of somebody advertising somebody, like wearing T-shirts or promoting some
Right.
businesses.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
So they
Cut
have
it
to
out
check,
with
because
AI.
TED is about sharing ideas, not about sharing capital.
So you can't like hold your cue card with like your brand on it in front of the camera while you're looking at it.
No, not really.
But we do that here on our show. So is there anything you'd like to plug?
Well, get a carpet, maybe a green carpet.
A green. You've been on this green thing the whole time. I think you should make a sculpture for this space that's kind of stuffy in here.
Leo will pay for it.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure he will.
That-
Well, I think we're at the time of the show.
Yeah.
where
You know,
we,
I'll say it right here.
Can I just say one more thing? One more
Everyone
thing.
has something to say.
One more thing before we close this episode off.
something?
I just want to say, now that you've been at TED and stuff, I've noticed a trend of OCAD and stuff. They choose their best alumni, the highest of the cream of the crop. And I'm expecting by next year your face will be on
The
OCAD.
TTC ads?
Yeah, an OCAD TTC ad for
Have
sure.
you seen them on the way?
Yeah.
They look very
Interesting.
interesting, to say the least.
Yeah. Well, again, capitalism. If it pays, I can build 2 more sculptures.
Okay.
Do you have time for a story, or we are?
Yeah, sure, yeah.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so like this year, how this whole speaker thing started, it's really kind of insane. This year I was working Night of the Ideas, but I was working as a tech. So the guy who plays the slides for other speakers, the Night Ideas, this high-profile thing that's kind of a little TEDx, but very little TEDx. So you have these old guys, they come, they speak about these important social issues, and then Anna Serrano comes like down from the stage. She announces somebody. She looks at me, and she's like, "Vlad, do you want to come up on a stage and speak about your stuff? We should have invited you." And I'm like, okay. She goes up on a stage and she's like, "And now, ladies and gentlemen, Vladimir Kanich will talk about his living sculptures." And I don't freaking like blink, and I'm up there, hey, like algae salad, changing the world and stuff. So that was kind of a really good story how I was just like, pushed on a stage. And
was that your first time on stage?
Well, maybe in let's say in Toronto, in that kind of capacity of public speaking.
Last time you were on stage, you had a bass guitar.
Yeah. And I find it really great how when you have open ideas like this, people just take a chance on you and they give you opportunities, which is really great, right?
Yeah.
And it's like it was really great on her behalf just to, do this stuff. It was not necessary. So that was kind of a great story of how my public speaking started. You want to go on
Shout
stage?
out.
And I'm like, I'm pressing I'm changing the slide button on the deck, like, okay, oh, hi.
You have to introduce yourself.
Yeah.
Walk up on the stage.
Yeah. Next, we'll see you in the House of Commons. But as I was saying, like your work is a gift to everyone, and in fact, to repay you, we have a gift for you. So I know you have.
We planted a tree in your name. 50 trees in Vlad's name.
See, I know you have like an affection for bringing life and growing.
Is this a puppy? Please,
things.
this be a
So
puppy.
I got you this.
Oh, wow. Awesome.
Chia kit.
A Chia Vlad.
Awesome.
Exactly. And, it doesn't have glasses, but also has a magnificent beard. That is for you.
Awesome.
You
Thank
can grow
very
algae
much.
out of it.
Wow. I'm certainly going to subvert it into something. Look, this full growth 1 to 2 weeks. Awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, no problem.
He's
Okay, guys,
thinking
this
like,
is
should
a
use chia.
non-brand planter that we really like.
Chia Vlad.
Yeah, it's Chia Vlad, right? Oh,
It's musical
there you
too.
go.
Yeah. Multifaceted.
and this show was brought to you by Chia Gnome. Chia Gnomes are popular gnomes. They're gnomes.
Yeah. Vlad's gonna do the ad read.
Look at the ad read.
Yeah.
Okay, so how much are you getting paid from Chia Gnomes?
And that's going to be
that
the
should
end
be
of
it.
our
Yeah,
show.
that's it.
Thank you
We're
all
good.
for tuning in, and it's been really a wonderful talk. It's so good to have you on.
Every time it's a pleasure when you come on. You always
Right.
have so much insight.
Yeah, well, it's great. Let's see where this onion, goes.
Yeah.
Until
Another
next
layer.
time, we'll see you later.